21-year-old Joe Cada made history last week, becoming the youngest World Series of Poker main event champion of all time and taking home $8.5 million.
All in. All in. All in.
And it is time to get aggressive for Cada. All in with those fours. The river card is a 7. Joe Cada doubles up.
Every once in a while, poker gives us a player who feels like they're about to change everything. Daniel Negreanu had that moment. Phil Ivey had it too. And then, another young star stepped onto the World Series of Poker stage, but almost nobody noticed. His story isn't about glitz, fame, or big sponsorship deals. It starts with what looked like a reckless gamble, one that turned out to be a stroke of genius. From endless online grinding to a career-defining leap, his journey feels like history repeating itself. The only difference? This time, nearly everyone overlooked it. You see, for most young poker players, the idea of dropping out of school to go pro usually raises eyebrows, sparks disapproval, and comes with endless warnings. But for Joe Cada, that leap of faith became the very decision that transformed him into a millionaire. Not just any millionaire, one who would eventually sit among poker's elite. Joe's story begins in Shelby Charter Township, Michigan, where he was born on November 18, 1987. Cards were practically woven into his DNA. His mother worked as a blackjack dealer at Detroit's Motor City Casino, so he grew up surrounded by the sounds of chips clinking and cards being shuffled. From day one, the game was in the air he breathed. Like many kids, Joe caught the poker bug early. But unlike most, he wasn't just a dreamer, he had an uncanny gift for the game. It started innocently enough with low-stakes matches against his high school buddies. While others were still fumbling with the basics, Joe was cleaning up the games. He had an instinct for numbers, but more importantly, he could read people like a book. That edge set him apart right away. At just 14, Joe made his first real move toward the big leagues. After scraping together $50 from his busboy job, he convinced his mom to help him set up an online poker account. She wasn't thrilled, but Joe pitched it like this. Instead of spending his money on movies or dances, he wanted to invest it in poker. Reluctantly, she agreed. What happened next changed everything. Joe didn't just keep playing, he kept winning. That first $50 was the only money he ever had to deposit. The rest was pure profit. Under the online screen name Joe Cada 99, Joe got to work. At 15, he was grinding out tiny stakes, 5-cent, 10-cent games on party poker. But his climb was fast and relentless. Within 2 years, he was competing at the site's highest stakes, regularly battling against seasoned professionals twice his age. By the time he turned 18, Joe was ready for a bigger challenge. He switched to Ultimate Bet, where he jumped straight into serious games. $5 per $10, $10 per $25, and even $25 over $50 no-limit hold'em. His rise looked unstoppable until disaster struck. Joe became one of the many victims of the infamous Ultimate Bet scandal. Cheated out of $150,000. It was a crushing setback, one that would have pushed most young players to quit. But Joe didn't. Instead, he swallowed the loss, stepped back down to smaller stakes, and rebuilt his bankroll from scratch. Within months, he was back in the fight. By 19, he was making serious money, so much that college started to feel like a distraction. Joe had been attending Macomb Community College, but as poker took over, he found himself skipping classes. Eventually, he dropped out altogether. To keep playing, he had to travel to places where he could legally compete, hopping on planes to destinations like the Bahamas and Costa Rica just to sit in the games. Wasn't all smooth sailing. Joe's early poker years were a wild ride. He'd often spend 20 hours a day glued to his computer, grinding hand after hand and riding out massive swings. Some days, he'd be up or down $20,000 to $30,000 in a single session. For a teenager, those numbers didn't even feel real. More like he was living in some alternate world where chips instantly turned into life-changing money. The stakes, the talent, and the sheer opportunity were too big to walk away from. So Joe Cada ditched his backup plan and went all in on poker. And that was just the beginning. What came next would not only cement his name in poker history, but also prove that the gamble he took as a teenager was worth every risk. In 2009, Joe Cada finally turned 21, the magic number that made him legal to play live poker in the United States. And where else would he head first but Las Vegas? He moved into a house full of poker grinders, surrounded himself with players chasing the same dream, and even linked up with Dean Hamrick, a respected pro from East Lansing who had already made his mark. By the time the 2009 World Series of Poker main event came around, Cada was already a beast online, grinding out 2,000 hands a day and pocketing over $500,000 in winnings between late 2008 and November 2009. But even the best hit walls. Right before poker's biggest stage, he went through a brutal $150,000 downswing. Things got so rough, he couldn't even cover the $10,000 buy-in himself. That's when Cliff Josephy and Eric Haber stepped in, two big names who agreed to back him in exchange for half his winnings. As it turned out, that deal would prove to be one of the smartest bets they ever made. The 2009 main event was massive, pulling in 6,494 players. Cada sat down on day 1C and came out swinging. By the end of the day, he was the overall chip leader. Riding that momentum, he told his friend Justin Lucial Peachy, "I'm finally getting my run good." And he wasn't kidding. There were bumps, of course. At one point, Jamie Robbins cracked his pocket aces with pocket tens for a pot worth 3.5 million chips. Most players would unravel after that, but Cada barely blinked. He kept pushing, kept attacking, even challenging Phil Ivey, one of the most feared players in the world, on multiple occasions. By the time the November 9 were set, Cada held 13,215,000 chips, fifth place going into the break. The final table itself was a spectacle. You had legends like Ivy, complete unknowns like logger Darvin Moon, and, in the middle of it all, a 21-year-old kid with a crew of yellow-shirted supporters and one of the sharpest minds in poker, Cliff Johnny Backs Josephy, in his corner. What followed was a marathon, 17 and a half hours of poker. Cada clawed his way to the end, knocking out France's Antoine Sout in third place in absolutely gut-wrenching fashion. First, he cracked Sout's pocket queens with a miracle 2 on the flop while holding pocket deuces.
River card is a 6, and yet another big double up for Joe Cada.
Then, moments later, his ace-king hit a king on the river to finish the job.
That did not just happen. Joe Cada did it again.
Sout was gone, and only Darvin Moon stood between Cada and history. Heads-up play was a war. Cada started with a 2-1 chip lead, but Moon wasn't going quietly. They traded haymakers, stacks swinging back and forth. Then came the pivotal hand. Cada raised $3 million pre-flop. Moon called, and the flop came 10 of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 9 of hearts. Both checked. The turn brought another 10, and this time, Cada bet $3 million. Out of nowhere, Moon shoved all in, covering Cada's entire stack. The room went silent. After a long tank, Cada made the call with Jack-9 for 2 pair, ahead of Moon's straight draw with 7-8. The river bricked, and Cada doubled up to take back control. The crowd erupted. He was back in the driver's seat.
The river card is a tray! Joe Cada doubles up!
Finally, the decisive hand arrived. Cada opened with a raise to $3 million.
And the standard raise now to $3 million.
Moon re-raised to $8 million.
He will make it $8 million to stick around.
And Cada shoved all in.
All in.
Now Cada is the aggressor trying to put Darvin Moon all in.
Moon snap called.
Call.
The room froze. Cada revealed pocket 9s. Moon showed Queen Jack of diamonds, a classic coin flip for the championship. The flop came 8 of clubs, 2 of clubs, 7 of spades. Safe for Cada. The turn brought the king of hearts. Still good. And then the river. The 7 of clubs. No queen, no jack, no flush. It was over.
Darvin Moon needs a queen or a jack, or Joe Cada will be the main event champ.
And that 7 will end it!
At just 21 years old, Joe Cada had toppled the field, beaten the logger from Maryland, and made history as the youngest main event champion the World Series of Poker had ever seen. His agent gave him a new nickname, The Kid, linking him forever to the late great Stu Ungar. However, Joe's story didn't stop with his 2009 main event win. It was just the beginning. In 2012, he proved he wasn't some one-hit wonder, finishing second in the WSOP 1,500 no-limit hold'em event and pocketing $412,424. The momentum carried into 2013 with 2 more deep runs, both fourth-place finishes worth over $240,000. But it was 2014 when he truly silenced the doubters. Cada captured his second WSOP bracelet in the $10,000 Six Max No Limit Hold'em Championship, outlasting elite names like Eric Lindgren, Martin Jacobson, and J.C. Tran. The win cemented his place as more than the kid who won young. He was now a legitimate force in the poker world. Then came 2018, the year that would redefine his legacy.
Tonight, the 2018 World Series of Poker main event final table begins. The last stage of a seemingly endless poker journey.
Cada started off strong by winning the $3,000 no-limit hold'em shootout, defeating former main event champion Joe McKeehan in the late stages to secure his third bracelet and $226,218. A few weeks later, he struck gold again in The Closer, the $1,500 no-limit hold'em event with a $1 million guarantee. That fourth bracelet came with a payday of $612,886, pushing his career WSOP earnings over $13 million. But even those victories weren't the highlight. That same summer, he became the first former main event champion since Dan Harrington in 2004 to make another final table. Back in 2009, Cada had won as a 21-year-old kid at a time when poker looked completely different. No GTO strategies, fewer high rollers, and an online scene still thriving in the US. Fast forward nearly a decade, and he returned to the main event final table not as a lucky newcomer, but as a seasoned veteran with the respect of the poker community. His path wasn't easy. On day 1C, he was nearly out, dwindling from 50,000 chips to just 9,000 before bagging a meager 16,500. By day 3, he finally started to build momentum, mixing in sharp bluffs and timely hands to climb the ranks. Against all odds, he powered through to day 7, securing a seat at the final table. Over 3 tense days, Cada battled the best in the world. On day 9, he survived down to the final 5 before his short stack left him little room to maneuver. He bowed out in 5th place, but not before locking up $2.15 million and making history as the only post-poker boom champion to return to a main event final table. His performance also landed him 3rd in the WSOP Player of the Year race, behind Sean Deeb and Ben Yu. Beyond the felt, Cada has been just as outspoken as he is competitive. He has long championed the legalization of online poker, arguing that the game is about logic, math, and decision-making, not luck. For him, poker isn't just a career. It's a passion worth protecting for future generations. And with 4 bracelets, over $13 million in WSOP winnings, and a historic double final table run, Joe Cada's story is far from over. He's not just the kid anymore. He's a poker legend still writing his legacy.